killing more and more people. It is today the number one reason people get cardiac myopathies, heart attacks, and strokes, including hemorrhagic and non-hemorrhagic strokes. So it is becoming the fastest reason for human mortality. Again, major cause of multi-organ failure. It is estimated 77 million people in India right now has diabetes. It is going to be doubled by 2045, but doctors think that this may be much more faster. A major reason for cardiovascular accidents is a silent killer, and we know that there is no effective cure. But we know there are a lot of researchers in diabetes, there are a lot of papers being published, there are either doctors who claim that they can treat diabetes, there are effective medicines. Trust me, if you look at the pharma market, there are n number of medicines from metformin to sitagliptin to Ayurvedic medications. You see there are a lot of medications being prepared in India to fight against diabetes. But still, we are far away from a cure. We are far away from an effective treatment protocol. The question is why. We need to understand why. See, the reason is not very simple. One is the huge cost associated with treatments. Do I have any diabetes related patients here or anybody who has diabetes? If you know anybody has diabetes, one of the medicine for diabetes which is sold today in the market would be sitagliptin metformin combination. Yes. Right? This is the second level treatment. Usually the first level is metformin. If it's not working, they'll go for a sitagliptin kind of medicine, right? So one strip of sitagliptin metformin combination is costing somewhere close to 650 rupees today in the market. With better brands, the price is going up. How do somebody who is doing a daily workout afford something like this kind of a medicine? So affordability is a big problem. Second thing is, it's difficulty for the restrictions associated with protocol. So when you say don't take sugar, don't take carbohydrates, it's very easy to say. It is very difficult to follow. One of my patients in Kerala was a bishop in a church. So whenever I say diet restriction to him, he'll say this thing. Karthik, you have to understand, food is kind of an enjoyment, right? And when we eat food with our family and everything, we enjoy it. But diet is like a suffering. You have to eat food different from everybody else. You can't take sugar. There is nothing funny about it, right? It's kind of a suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants to get food restriction. That is the proof of the world. You like it, you don't like it, your patients are not going to follow the diet. That is the proof of it. The better we accept it, the faster we can find a solution to this. Okay? Then the nature of the disease. Diabetes progresses much more faster. It affects multi-organ, and our approach is also a problem, which I'll come to. For example, we think diabetes is a problem of sugar. Whereas if you look at close into Ayurveda, we know it's a problem of the males. So the protocol itself has a problem, right, where they're looking at it. Then the cultural and socio-economic premise. To explain this cultural and socio-economic premise, can I see both of hands? How many people didn't take the jalebi or the sweet today? One. Okay. 2, 3, 4. Out of 80 people, 5, 6, around 7. Okay, around 7 out of 80, meaning less than 10% of people has not gone to the sugary sweets. Everybody, including me. Okay, I have a sweet here. Everybody else has gone and taken that sweet. Why? Because that's our culture. That is how we are grown. That's how we are grown up. Our moms have better sweets, so we will have no sweets. Right? This is the nature of this. So that is the cultural social progress. Our food culture has sweets in it. It's very difficult to not get it. Another thing is the lack of resources for diet and training. If you want to replace the sweet with something else, do we have an option? The only option is maybe stevia or something that doesn't taste good. Right? So at the end of the day, there are not many options that you can give your patient. What you are going to give Karela juice to the patient? It's not going to work. Right? It's not going to work. So this we have to understand. We have to accept these are problems. There is no point in arguing with your patient saying that you should not take sugar or you should not do this, do that, unless you have an option to give them. You don't have an alternative to give them, which we don't have as of now. Right? So these are the reasons why diabetes treatment is often not very effective. So today's session we are going to focus on three things. What are we doing wrong and what are we doing right on diabetes treatment? It's reversed. So we see a lot of claims saying that diabetes can be reversed. Is that really a myth or is that a truth? If it's a truth, if we accept that that is something which we can do, how do we get to do that in Ayurveda? This is what we are going to do today. So let me start by explaining what Prameha is. One of the common mistakes that we do, Ayurveda Christians do, is to actually going and treating allopathic conditions. So I have earlier had a question about how CKD can be treated, how this disease can be treated, can we give salt in this disease or not? Salt cannot be given in hypertension, that is true. Okay? Salt cannot be given in hypertension. So Saintham cannot be given in hypertension. But let me ask you, if your Vata is being got an avarana by Kapha, can you give salt or not? What is that?
Yes.
Yes? Hypertension can happen in two ways. It can happen because of a Pitta Vritti, stress-induced Pitta Vritti causing hypertension, or it can also happen because of a Kapha avarana of Vata, Mudha Vata, hypertension. So if your patient is having hypertension because of Kapha avarana of Vata, does Sainthava reduces Kapha or not? So can you give Sainthava in Mudha Vata or not? But can you give Sainthava in hypertension? You cannot. Because that is your knowledge, right? Hypertension can be treated with salt. But Mudha Vata can be Anilomana, can be done with salt. Right? So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to think on Ayurvedic terms, not in their terms. This is a game. You play by your rules, or you play by their rules, and you can be a spectator. Choice is yours. You can be either a spectator in their game, or you can be a participant in Ayurvedic game. So that is your choice. So we need to understand what we call in Ayurveda as Prameha is Praharshena Mehati Iti Prameha. The main symptom is that you urinate a lot, including with there is increased frequency of urination, there is fatigue, there is excessive thirst, there is excessive hunger. There is a reason why I didn't use polyphagia, polydipsia, polyphagia, because this is what is explained in the treatise. Right. So if this is a case, let's say this is a case which is coming to us, a 30-year-old baby complains of excess urination at night and generalized fatigue. His blood work suggests fasting blood sugar at 114 mg per kg. His mother has a history of diabetes mellitus. What would be your prescription? Can anybody stand up and give me a prescription on this? We are all doctors, there is no judgment. Is there anybody who can stand up and give me a prescription for this? A room full of Ayurveda doctors and they are not able to put a prescription is very wrong. This is not an exam. You can just say something. What medicine would you give? Nobody? Okay, so then let me show you a prescription. So, Nisha Tadadavi Quaff Tab 202. Nisha Amarga Churnam 1 teaspoon twice daily before food. Diet with Tab 202 after food. Reduce carbohydrate intake, few sugars. This was the prescription given to the case. Do you think this prescription will help this patient?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. How do you think that this prescription will help the patient? That this could be one of the apt prescription for this patient? Yes, ma'am. Let's say the patient's Prakriti is Vata.
And coach.
Let me ask you something. In a patient, this is one of the arguments that I usually hear, and I have a problem with it. Let me tell you why. Let's say your patient, whatever Prakriti has a Kapha vitiation, would your medicine really change? Should your patient really change? Because Prakriti and Prakriti are two different things. You should not confuse between these two. Prakriti is something with which you are born. Janma Maranandara Vahini. It's not going to change from your birth to your death. There is no medicine for Prakriti because Prakriti need not be treated. Right? Two Pitta Prakriti people will always have Pitta Prakriti. Reasons, right? So let's say, Brad Pitt, the Hollywood actor. Which Prakriti is Brad Pitt? Pitta, passing Pitta. Angelina Jolie. Which Prakriti is Angelina Jolie? Thin hair, broad forehead, right? Always keep on a stealth build. Angelina Jolie is Pitta Prakriti. When two Pitta Prakriti people come together, what will happen? There will always ego clashes. Did they divorce or not? They did, right? So Prakriti is not going to change. Prakriti will show its true colors always. But I'm trying to say, don't tell this outside, but again, inside the room, so I have the doctor talk soon. What I'm trying to say is, Prakriti is not going to make much difference once your Vikriti is on top of it. Okay, you have to consider Prakriti, you're not wrong, you're right. Then saying, even if it's a Vata of Prakriti, this is the prescription that you're going to give. So the question is, would this prescription be effective or not? It's the question. What do you do? Because this is one of the most common major prescription that you are going to see in your practice by some other doctors, or you might yourself write this prescription. So do you believe this is right? Because if you believe this is right, then let's discuss on this. If you don't believe this is right, let's see how it is possible. Let me tell you my story about this. I never believed this is right, and I'll tell you why.
Question is not involved.
So in 2015-16 onwards, I was working for another company, and I was a fairly good doctor. I was not a bad doctor, I was a fairly good doctor. I was made head of a hospital. When I was made head of a hospital, that hospital had a diabetic clinic. Now, that diabetic clinic was a very famous clinic. It was handled by many great doctors like Dr. Rajgopal, Dr. Narayana Sharma, Dr. C.R. Akhilesh. One of our textbooks in Parampara Conducts is written by this Dr. C.R. Akhilesh. So, you understand they are like great doctors. So, I was a very young guy at that time. So, I was given a charge. I still believe it's a blunder to give this such a young, inexperienced guy in that charge, but my guru was very fond of me, so he gave me the charge of that hospital. So, when I actually started treating, and when I look at the documents, I see a lot of prescriptions like this. The only problem is, when your patients are having this medicine, there is, for some time, there is control. But after 6 months, 3 months, the sugar will still rise. The blood sugar level will still go high. The symptoms will reappear. Then you have to change medicines. Instead of Vishakadadadi, you will bring Taradadadi. Instead of Vishamala Churnam, you will bring something else. So the medicines will keep on changing. The protocol was the same. But the results were not coming. They were not consistent. So I understood that there is something wrong with the protocol. And I discussed with the guru. His experience was also the same. When you give these medicines, it will work for some time, but then again, no control. So what is the problem? Where are we getting wrong? This is true. I challenge you all to this. You start giving these medications to a patient with 140 mg/dl, newly diagnosed patient with diabetes. You give this, you will see control for maybe few weeks, but you will see that there is no change afterwards. You cannot bring the diabetes down. So where are we getting this wrong? Right? Fortunately, I had a lot of young doctors working for me. So get together, I called a meeting one day and asked them to review the textbooks thoroughly, take out every other textbook and start reading about Prameha and find out where are we getting wrong. Okay, because treatment has to match the textbook. So, what we found, there was an interesting thing which I found in the textbook. So, this is Ashtanga Hridaya Nidana Sthana Prameha Nidana. Okay? The sloka that we are seeing is the premonitory symptoms of Prameha. Okay? In Purva Rupa of Prameha. And this is a very interesting sloka. This is one of my favorite sloka. And it's a very interesting sloka. Prayastu Khalidoshaha Prabhudaha Prameha Nivaktesthimani Purarupani Dashenji Tathyada Jedila Bhavo Keshishu Madhuryasyada Karapadayo Suktadaho Mukha Kalu Kanta Shosham Kipasam Alasim Malam Kaye Kaya Chitreshu Paridaham Stuptadam Chashu. Then there is an interesting line Shatpada Pipiliga Pischa Sharira Mutra Apisa. Shatpada Pipiliga Pischa Sharira Mutra Apisa. And that is what is underlined as number 9. Attraction of insects and ants to the body and urine of the rogi who is going to get diabetes. Why is that happening? Sugar, yeah? Sugar in the urine. I thought this was also right. I really thought this was right. But I was one of this rebel kind of doctors who wouldn't believe so much things very easily. So I was the head of the hospital, so which one means that you can do anything you want in the hospital. So I had a lab in the hospital. So I called all my junior doctors and I told them, get me urine samples of all the patients of diabetes in the lab and put it out. They put it on the ground. We will see. So one day morning, my junior doctors went, they collected samples of urine from the lab and they put it out on there was a river nearby, on the river bank. We waited for one whole day. All these patients had diabetes. We waited for one whole day and there were no ants. Okay, so I was perplexed. This cannot be right because Bhargava is saying that ants will come to the urine. I kept urine of diabetes patients for one whole day and ants were not coming. So I was confused. I went home and I started thinking, what is this? Why is this happening? Then I got the idea. I've been a very fool because urine threshold, renal threshold of glucose is 180 mg per dl. Meaning, your kidneys will only start removing glucose through urine when your blood sugar will go above 180 mg per dl. That is what we call as the renal threshold of glucose. Right? So if urine has to present sugar in it, the blood sugar has to be 190 mg per dl or more. So the next day I went to the lab, I collected samples of people who got high diabetes, above 180 mg per dl, and I put it out on the same day, the next day. I waited the whole day, but that day also there were no ants. So I almost concluded that this is bullshit. Okay, this is not going to work. Ajay made some mistake, or somebody in translation made a mistake, and no ant is going to come for urine. Okay. But next day I had a very over-enthusiastic house surgeon with me. She went ahead and she took a few more samples from the lab and she put it outside on the third day. Within 1 hour, when I was doing my IP rounds, she came running and said, "Doctor, in one of the petri dish, there are ants." Okay? So when I went running, I saw that in one of the petri dish, there are a lot of ants. Okay? So we then traced it to the sample to the lab and looked at the patient. And that patient was having a very high diabetes, and that patient had this condition called as diabetic ketoacidosis. So I hope you know what diabetic ketoacidosis is. It is an advanced condition, rather advanced complication of diabetes, where the body doesn't have enough insulin, so the blood sugar level is high, so the body will break down fat and has to make energy, and as a side effect, ketone bodies are formed in the blood, and that makes blood very acidic, and the ketone bodies will be removed through urine. And one peculiar thing about this is, if you have ever smelled ketone, okay, ketone has a very fruity smell. Literally fruity smell. It has the smell of ripe mango. If you have not smelled ketone bodies, you can just buy a mango fruity packet from the store and you can smell it, the same smell of that. Ketone bodies have a ripe mango fruity smell. Then I understood I has been much more grateful because the ants were not coming to the urine for the sugar. They were coming to the urine because of the smell. Okay. So that's proved. I was right, I was wrong. But now there is another peculiar problem. If you go back to the slide, the last slide, this is Purulu. Right? This is Purulu. Now, the next slide, diabetic ketoacidosis is actually an advanced stage of diabetes. So how does a Purulu of Prameha become a complicated stage in diabetes? Fair question, right? Because Acharya said this is Purulu. The stage where the urine attracts ants and insects are the Purulu of Prameha. Whereas we know today from modern understanding that diabetic ketoacidosis is an advanced stage of diabetes. So how does that correlate? There's a problem there. Right? So we have to say the Purulu of Prameha equals to advanced stage of diabetes. How is that possible? Can you think of a reason why? Hemometer. That's the reason, which is the lab instrument which is used to understand CBC and blood sugar level. See, at the time, you have to look at the chronology. The chronology is something that 9th century BC, when Sushrata Acharya was writing Sushrata Samhita, there were no blood tests. At 4th century BC, when Charaka was writing Charaka Samhita, there was no blood test. At 4th century AD, when Ashtanga Sangraham was written, there were no blood tests. At 8th to 9th century AD, when Ashtanga Hridayam was written, then there was no blood test. Blood test came in the 21st century. At that time, the symptoms which we just described, this is why I described the Prameha symptoms, fatigue, right? Increased thirst, increased hunger. All these symptoms are easy to overlook. They are easy to ignore. So, our Vaidyas, be it Charikas or Acharyas, were not seeing Prameha patients until it became a complication. Meaning, the first time a patient would walk in to the house of a Vaidya would be when a prameha gets into, or a diabetes, what we call today's diabetes, get into a complication like diabetic ketoacidosis. So when our acharyas were seeing patients, they were seeing the patients from the stage of diabetic ketoacidosis and forward. But today, we are treating, both you and me, we are treating diabetes much more earlier, meaning even earlier than the Puradupa of what is mentioned in the textbook, because we have blood tests. When we do routine checkups, we have executive health plans, we have full body health plans, we have insurance coverages. So our patients test much more often and they diagnose, they have blood tests, meaning they have diabetes or they have high blood sugar earlier. To get diabetic ketoacidosis, your blood sugar has to be at least 250 or higher. Most of the patients that today getting diagnosed with blood sugar come at 130 mg per dl, 140 per mg per dl. What is the blood sugar where we declare that a patient is diabetic? Today, when I was studying, I had like 120 mg per dl. Today, doctors diagnose at 100 mg per dl because levels are coming down. I am afraid tomorrow they will get to 80 and everybody will be diabetic. See, when one edition of Hutchinson's was released, it was 120 mg per dl. And the next edition, it became 110 mg per dl. Within 4th edition and 5th edition, half population of the world become diabetic. This is the truth of the truth. What I'm trying to say is, we are seeing patients as patients much more earlier than Vakpada used to see them. Is this clear? Because everything I'm going to say about this is based on this point. Is this point clear? Yes. Are there any questions on this? Have you got this? Okay. So, what our understanding is that our Nidana, some pathogenesis, prodromal symptoms, when this happens, in the modern understanding, it is the prodromal symptoms is very similar to the advanced signs and symptoms of diabetes. So this is the key understanding that we need to. Okay, let me then ask you a question. If a patient is coming with this advanced symptom of diabetes, which is, let's say, diabetic ketoacidosis, which we know is a pitta pradhana vyadhi at that time, that stage is pitta pradhana. There's a lot of information is happening, the blood is becoming acidic, very similar to Vata pathology. If when that happens, your protocol would be also the pitta shamana protocol, right? Where your Visha Tatagadi Kashaya is perfect. But remember our earlier patient, he was only having 140 mg per dl of sugar. The only problem was the frequent urination, fatigue, heaviness. So would that prescription be right for that patient? No. Right? Why? Because it was intended for a diabetic ketoacidosis or advanced kind of stage. Our patient does not have that advanced stage of diabetes. So that Vishavatagadi Kashayam in that patient will not be effective as we imagine. So our treatment will fail. Okay? So this is Nisha. If you look at the ingredients, Nisha, Kadaga, Nelika, Techi, Parshvati Patrika, everything is Pitta. Right? So this won't work in a condition where the sugar is 140 mg per dl. So our key understanding is this: the prodromal symptoms mentioned in treatises correlate to advanced diabetes and its complications. The currently prescribed prameha medication address the pitta kapha combination of complications, which is more important. So complications only. Patients of new age come to doctors with pre-diabetes or mild diabetes, which we call from 130 to 180 mg per dl. Forgive me for my numbers. Today, if any doctors is 130, they will say it's from 110. When I studied, I was 120 actually. Okay, so most of these patients comes with kapha predominant ama associated symptoms, not pure pitta, but kapha associated ama related symptoms, and the medicines have to be suggested considering this real time dosha visheshan, not blindly following the textbook, because what is said in the textbook is for an advanced condition, not for diabetic acidosis or not for the current starting phase. Okay. So then the next question. So this is one part of our understanding. This you have to keep in mind. So your Vishakhapatani Kashayam is not the solution for your diabetes. I hope that is clear. Your Vishakhapatani Kashayam works great in diabetic ketoacidosis, but it is not your solution for a newly, freshly diagnosed diabetes. Okay, that clear? Okay, this is one understanding. Second, next question is what causes diabetes? Because Nidana Parivarjana Neva Chikitsa. Chikitsa is twofold, right? Nidana Parivarjana Neva Chikitsa, Samprapti Vimanam Chikitsa. breaking down Samprapti Chikitsa, removing Nidana Chikitsa. Now we are breaking Samprapti with the medicines. How do we do Nidana Parivachanam? Okay, so to do that, we need to understand how diabetes happens. Most of the research today does not know how diabetes happens. If you go Google and research what causes diabetes, it will say insulin or insulin resistance, lack of insulin or insulin resistance. But when you ask what causes that, there is no answer. So if you ask another 5 numbers of why, you will reach that point. But today, I have been fortunate to travel with Ayurveda to many places, including US and other places. Of all the conferences I attended, what I come to understand, the cutting edge understanding of diabetes as of today is on AGEs. AGE stands for Advanced Glycation End Product. So, the question is, what is glycation? The glycation is where protein or fat mixed with sugar inside our body and it forms a complex. AGE, Advanced Glycation End Product. Right? Sugar is mixed with protein or fat within our body, and this is called glycation. The result is an end product, a complex molecular structure called as advanced glycation end product. We call AGE. Now, AGE is harmful for our body because AGE causes tissue inflammation wherever it goes. It hampers all the bodily activities. It causes tissue inflammation, and that tissue inflammation creates insulin resistance. Okay? So, AGE, the most troublesome part about this is AGE can happen inside our body, or AGE can actually occur in the food that we eat as well. Meaning, the glycation process can happen inside the body, the glycation process can happen when we are cooking food also. And it's not a new concept, we already know this. The AGE effect on insulin resistance, PCOS and liver disease is well studied. See, in AGEs in circulation causes insulin resistance, thereby promoting high insulin release. AGE will cause insulin resistance, AGE will cause tissue inflammation and cause insulin resistance, which will land in diabetes type 2. AGEs will also go to ovaries and will cause ovarian dysfunction by affecting steroidogenesis and folliculogenesis. So what is steroidogenesis? It's where we make the hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So the estrogen and progesterone production is affected and it causes folliculogenesis where the follicles are formed, resulting in PCOS. The same AGEs will cause tissue inflammation and oxidative stress in liver, which will cause non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. One culprit, AGE, 3 points. One is tissue inflammation causing insulin resistance, right? Ovarian action causing PCOS, and one more, it is in liver causing NAFLD. One compound, a combination of sugar, protein, or fat. Do we know anything similar in Ayurveda? Ama. Very nice. So Ama is such a very similar topic. One of the difficulty that I have, I always had when I actually started reading about Ama, my definitions of Ama were not actually agreeing with this concept. Who knows Ama's definition by any chance? Anybody who is a sloka of here who can recite me the Ama sloka? Forgive me for being that because I always been this sloka because I found it studying poems much more easier. I'm a poem buff, so I study poems. So in Ashtanga Hridayam, the sloka is Ushmano Alpa Velattvena Nadumadi Avajam Avajam Dushtam Amashayam Rasam Amam Protection. This is the sloka, right? Ushmano Alpa Velattvena Nadumadi Avajam. Ushmano Alpa Velattvena, because of reduced strength of Agni. Dhatu Mati Avajam. Even the first dhatu is not properly formed. Right? Dushtam Amashe Gata Rasam. So first dhatu is what? Rasa dhatu. Dushtam Amashe Gata Rasam. This Rasa has become Dushta, vitiated, and it is in the Amashya, and that is called Rasam Amam Protection. It's called Ama. Now everything is great, that is true, but the problem is by that definition, Ama should only exist in the Poshta. Right? Ama should only exist in the Poshta. Have you heard about a disease called Ama? Yeah? So how does Ama then exist? By definition, Ama has to be in the stock. Because Dushtam Ama Shayam, that is definition. Definition means something, right? Definition is definition. So how does then Ama can be found outside Ama Shayam?
उत्तरोत्तर धातु नहीं बनेगी ना, उत्तरोत्तर धातुओं में जाएगा धातु
The karma can go into circulation, but then how it is something not like, let's say, I get a sinusitis. I am very fond of sinusitis, personally. And if I have sinusitis, if I put hair oil in my head, it will increase more.
Yes.
There is no relation with my hungerness or my stomach. There is no ushma alpha. My acne is working properly. Still, when I get a cold, if I apply oil on my head, there is kind of ama there, because it will increase. There is ama in that condition. So can ama exist independent of everything? So what usually happens is, we come to read treatises as a like study for syllabus. Okay. See, if you read, I hated textbooks when I studied BAMS, because these are things you need to study for exams. But after I studied BAMS, when I started reading these books for entertainment, I started loving them. But there are a lot of wonderful slokas in our textbooks which we don't read much. For example, in the last chapter of Attending the CME, there is this wonderful sloka by Karthik. He says, this is one of my favorite slokas in the textbook. Edat tat amrita jagadayasa varjita yavi hala halattamcha satyo dubhadnasthira. This is written by Karthik in 4th century about the condition today. He said, Edat tat amrita, Ayurveda is amrit, nectar. Jagadayasa varjita, which the world got without any effort. Right? To get the original amrit, the devas and asuras have to come. They have to put Mandara Parvata in the Milky Way. They have to put that Vasuki Sappa as the rope, and they have to do the Mathana. That's how they got the original Amrit. But this Amrit from Ayurveda, we got it without any effort. Right? Then he says, Yati Hana Haratvamcha Satyo Urbhajanastinam. But it will turn into Hara Hara poison. Hara is the poison which came out of Vasuki. It will turn into a poison like Hara Hara if kept in Durbhajanam. Wrong vessels. See, who are vessels? We are vessels. If we are not studying, if we are not appreciating Ayurveda, if we are not studying enough, it will turn poisons. Because half foods, like half Vaidyas will take more damage than ignorant persons. So that's why Karthik says this is what is happening today. All of us are Durbhajanas, not us. I'm saying many people are Durbhajanas. So we are not trying enough. So slokas will become very entertaining once you start reading after your BAMS course. Never read doing your BAMS reading. Okay, so once you start reading this, the sloka which I just quoted, this is in Ashtanga Sutra chapter number 13, sloka number 25. Okay, if you look at the next sloka, the next sloka says, Anye doshebhya adi dushtebhya anyonya murchana kotrasya visham vadanti amasya sambhava. This is the sloka, right? Anye doshebhya evam adi dushtebhya anyonya murchana kotrasya visham vadanti amasambhava. Which means there is another opinion. See, whenever our Acharya says two opinions, this is the rule, you have to remember this. Whenever our Acharya says two opinions for the same thing, the first opinion is the current opinion, the second opinion is the Acharya's opinion. That is the rule. Right? The first opinion is the current opinion. So the current opinion at that time when Bhakra was writing it was that Ama was obeying the sloka. The next line, sloka number 26, is actually what Bhakra thinks about Ama. He says, Anya doshebhya eva adidushtebhya anyonya murchana. When doshas will become vitiate and they vitiate each other, right? Like kotrevasya visham. When the grain is stored for very long term, that grain becomes stale. The same way it produces poison within itself, right? So if you store rice or if you store a grain for a very long time without proper care, what happens? It will go stale. Did the poison is that come from outside? No, the poison is inside only. The same way, the body will produce ama, which means any dosha, dusha, murchan is ama according to Bhakra. Okay? So if you look at this and compare this AGs, AGs are formed when there is metabolism is not proper. The NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, was renamed last month. I don't know whether you have heard. The European Association has renamed NAFLD in a new name. Metabolic dysfunction related liver disease. MSFLD. Which means when there is a metabolic dysfunction, AGs are formed AGs will affect the liver and will cause fatty liver. Fat get deposited in the liver. So if that is the case, we said dosha mochanam is our ama, according to Vakra. If that is true, would that be amam in the pitta sthan? Am I right? Yes, yes. If fatty liver does the function of pitta, we know that, right? It's a pitta sthan. So if fat is getting deposited because of the AGs are causing tissue inflammation and fat is getting deposited, which is not actually fat. This is where we get wrong. It's not fat, it is actually amount is getting deposited in the liver. Think again, what is your PCOS? It is where the function of ovary is being disrupted by cyst, by kapha kind of cyst. Kapha is Vishika ama. Right? So is that again ama in the pitta stana? Think of thyroid, think of hypothyroidism, autoimmune linked hypothyroidism. You gain weight, you lose hair, you get fatigue. Similar symptoms, ama in a pitta stana. So how you see this is getting generated. So what we are trying to treat also in the first stage of diabetes is also ama. It is nothing else. So I am giving one class in 3 diseases, PCOS, liver and disease. When all these conditions, hypothyroidism, your liver disorder, your PCOS, what you are treating is actually ama in a pitta stana. This is what actually you are treating. So if you look at this, this is how it will correlate. The processed food that we eat today has more AGs than anything. Cheese has AGs. Fried food has AGs. There are published studies about AGs. For example, look at this. Food such as chips, crackers, cookies, due to the presence of oil, butter, cheese, nuts and eggs, fried has more AG concentration. This is Journal of American Diabetes Association 1996. This is not a new concept. We know this for a very long time, but they couldn't link AGs to diabetes at that time because they don't know how to do. This is an average idea of ama in these places, right? This is 2005. Full-fat American and Parmesan cheese contains more dietary AGs in comparison to mozzarella cottage cheese. Cheese has this. Dairy, which is processed, has this. So processed food has more AGs. What are we consuming more today? Processed foods. So the pathology will morph something like this. Okay? Sugar and fats. If you remember the Ayurveda Vidhana of Prameha, it is Mitta, Madhura, Ahar. So which is the sugar and fats. Right? Produces AGs and it affects steroidogenesis, folliculogenesis, causes ovarian dysfunction, it creates insulin resistance, it will result in type 2 diabetes. This is the current understanding of not modern medicine, of modern scientists about the pathogenesis of PCOS, of diabetes, of also thyroid, or also liver disease also. If the same thing, the AGs will affect the liver, it will create fatty liver. NFL, then it will turn into NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, then it will progress into liver cirrhosis. Okay? The next. So this is how it will do, the big picture. This is how the idea of them and the idea of us will compare. So sugar plus fat, which forms AGs, causes tissue level inflammation, disrupts insulin functioning, disrupts liver function, causes NAFLD, diabetes and PCOS. Same thing if you look at Ayurveda Vidhana, excess Nikta Madhura Guru Ahara Vihara, Kapha Visheshan, Dhatvatni Mandya, Dhadvadamam, Sodadushti, which affects Medas and Athva. If you remember, the Dhatu of Prameha is Medas and Jala. Okay. Affect causes Kapha Avarana, Dhadvadama, and result in lost Athava, Prameha, Pitta Sthana, and Adhamama pathogens. This will what happens. I know everybody has quick pictures, but let me tell you this, if you understand this better, you will never get a picture. What you are dealing with is ama, what you are dealing with is a kapha visheshan, the first stage, and it is not different pathologies, it's the same pathology going different places. First, your diabetes treatment, your PCOS treatment, your liver disorder treatment, your hypothyroidism treatment can be one. Have you seen this test which is prescribed by allopathic doctors when you go to a doctor with liver disorder and thyroid disorder? It is the antibody, anti-thyroid ATPO test, right? Which is what? Autoimmune detector. So they think everything is born from the same thing. We already know from 9th century BC that all of this is happening because of the same pathological process. Okay, so more than if you click your pictures, if you remember this, I think you will become better physicians and do better at this. Okay. So, if that is the case, our next question. So you understood how diabetes is happening, how Pramaya is happening, how it is basically AMA, starting off with AMA. But we don't call it AMA because the concept of AMA has evolved over time. Because we are stuck with there. Akbara has the audacity, has the courage to view AMA from a different perspective. We still don't have because we are studying for marks. We are not studying for our patients. That's the problem. See, one of the story that changed my life was told by my Ryan Silsa professor. There is a physician in Kerala called Dr. Garg. He's an oncologist. You might have heard, he's a very famous oncologist, Dr. Garg. Once a couple came to see Dr. Garg, Bashir and Fatima. Bashir was having stage 2 lymphoma cancer and he came for treatment. Fatima was accompanying Bashir. Their children were abroad. They had no relatives because Bashir and Fatima had a love marriage. Both of their families were against them getting married, but despite all struggles, Bashir and Fatima got married. They had 2 beautiful children, and then they get told they set the road. Bashir and Fatima are alone right now. So they came for treatment at the doctor's place, the hospital. So Fatima was very devoted wife. They were in so much trouble. You see those couples, right? Now we felt jealous. There are couples who are in love. Usually families like kind of it's not where love happens. But there are certain couples who are in love. So this was that kind of a couple. Fatima was very devoted wife. She used to take care of Bashir so much. So one day during the rounds, Bashir was admitted, he was undergoing chemotherapy and everything. Fatima was actually waiting for the doctor every day. And after the rounds, the doctor got out of the room. Fatima went after the doctor and she held Dr. Garg's hand and she said, "Sir, for last 26 years, I have been with Bashir." After saying this, she collapsed. She got a stroke. Okay, she was admitted in the same hospital, next room as Bashir. Now this was a problem. Husband is already having cancer. Wife has a stroke now. But she was in a coma. She was not opening her eyes. She was not talking anything. The doctor was very sad. After a few days, what happened? Bashir got better. His chemotherapy worked. He got better. He started walking. He started talking and everything. So Bashir was near Fatima every day. And one day, when the doctor was in OPD, he was writing his sick patient. One of the nurses came running and she said, "Sir, Fatima is opening her eyes." Okay. So the other doctor came running. He left everything and he ran to his room to see his patient. And when he was entering the patient in the room, Fatima was just opening her eyes. At that time, she was in that moment. The stroke happened. But she was in coma. Bashir was sitting beside her. Fatima was not seeing Bashir. Fatima was seeing the doctor. So Fatima said, "Sir, she was just feeling that sentence she was saying." She said, "Sir, for the last 26 years, I lived with Bashir. He is the only guy I have got in my life. I cannot live without him. Please give me. Please give him back to me." She was finishing that sentence months ago when she got stroke. She was still remembering that in her head. She was frozen in time. And Vedanand Swami has written this in his autobiography. He said, "I was so moved by that. Because Bashir is nearby. He got cured." See, this is why, for some reason, we exist. We can make money out of it, there's nothing wrong. I made money out of this. We can do all sorts of things out of this profession. But if you ask me why do we have to be doctors, we exist for people like Bashir and Fatima. We exist for the love like Bashir and Fatima. My professor told me, tomorrow you can get a Bashir and you can get a Fatima. Somebody else's son will come to you, somebody else's mother will come to you, and they are so valuable, so precious. We cannot be lapsed at it. So we might feel a bit sleepy, after the ladies nothing, but please pay attention. So we continue. So question is diabetes reversible? Okay, that's the question. Is diabetes really reversible? We see a lot of claims. How do we think about this? Okay, so look at these gentlemen. Okay, so the idea of diabetes cure actually happened in Canada somewhere close to 1920. In 1920, there is a wonderful thing happened in the Juvenile Hospital of Toronto. In Juvenile Hospital of Toronto, there are 12 kids who were in diabetic coma, right? In diabetic coma, they were in coma. They were in diabetic coma. So when diabetes get higher and higher, you go to coma stage. In type 1 diabetes, there is no treatment also at that time. People will die. Children will die when you get type 1 diabetes. So children will first fall in diabetes coma and then they will pass off. In coma, they will die. This was the condition. In 1920, these two gentlemen, Frederick Banting and Charles Best, walked into the Juvenile Hospital of Toronto. There were 12 children who were in coma in that hospital. They start injecting these patients. They were in coma for very long time, very long years. And there were patients, there were other parents sitting. While they were there, these two gentlemen came in and they injected a very peculiar subject, medicine, into the hands of these children. Within seconds, all the children who were in coma for many years started waking up as from a dream. Do you know what they injected? Insulin. Insulin was invented by Frederick Banting and Charles Best. Do you know how they invented it? They harvested it out of the beta cells of a dog. The dog. That's the dog. And that's how they got insulin. They harvested insulin out of a dog. That is the big dog. That was the big change. Okay? So that was a huge, huge achievement in terms of curing diabetes, because insulin is one way we can cure diabetes, because insulin resistance causes problem. If you supplement more and more insulin, it can overcome insulin resistance to a certain extent. So that was a great news then. If you look at the news, the Toronto Daily, March 20, 1992, Toronto doctors on track of diabetes cure. So this was the first idea of diabetes cure. Injecting insulin will cure diabetes. This is the first idea. But the problem is, what happens in type 2 diabetes, where there is insulin resistance? Right? Insulin resistance is not the insufficiency of insulin. It is also there, but that is where your tissues do not accept insulin. They do not respond to insulin. So how do we overcome that? That's the next question. So meet the hero. I was very fortunate to meet this guy from all the conferences. I told earlier story because of the heading, Banting Memorial Lecture 2012. So Banting is the guy who invented insulin, right, or discovered insulin. So for his achievement, he was given the Nobel Prize. But the American Diabetic Association runs a lecture every year about researches in diabetes, and the 2012 lecture was delivered by this doctor, or Dr. Roy Taylor. He was an endocrinologist and a researcher. He is still based out of UK. Dr. Roy Taylor gave a very unusual speech. He said that diabetes can be reversed. Until that time, we were under the belief that diabetes cannot be cured. He said, no, diabetes can be reversed. And he said, how? He said, the beta cells in the pancreas, which is producing insulin, right, they are dying, was the current understanding. At that time, the contemporary understanding was that when you get diabetes, the beta cells in your pancreas die. But then he said, the beta cells do not die, they only sleep, they only go dormant. If you reduce your fat from your liver, from your waist, right, your pancreatic beta cells can be revived and they can produce insulin. While you do this, while you reduce fat quantity, you will also reduce insulin resistance, and then diabetes can be reversed. Of course, as you can imagine, this was a huge controversy when he presented his paper, because nobody believed him. In 2015, Dr. Roy Taylor did a study with 30 subjects. What he did, he gave only a 700 kilocalorie of diet to the patients. Basically, it was a juice diet. He only gave juices. And he reversed diabetes out of 80% of the patients. He reversed it. So he had proved that diabetes can be reversed. When this was published, it actually started a very humongous number of researches across the globe. In 2015, Dr. Roy Taylor got the biggest funded research in UK. He is right now one of the most funded researchers in the world. The most money is not spent on cancer, it's not spent on any other disease. The highest budget given by the UK government is to Dr. Roy Taylor on reversing diabetes as a today. Then there are many more papers. This is one of the latest papers. Reversal and remission of type 2 diabetes and update for practitioners 2022 June. So if you look at the points, type 2 has been traditionally viewed as irreversible. But recent research shows it can be reversed or put into remission. 642 million people are affected, but the important point is this. Respected organizations like WHO, Diabetes UK now openly acknowledge that diabetes is metabolically reversible, at least for a period of time. They say there are 4 ways to reverse it. One is low carbohydrate diet, very low calorie diet, exercise, bariatric surgery. Bariatric surgery is where you reduce the amount of your stomach, you cut off a part of your stomach. This is what they believe can reverse diabetes. Again, the same thing which we are saying. This is another research that came in 22. This was the same banting memorial lecture which was given by Roy Digger, but in 2022 a new paper has now come. This paper is only 2 years old. Look at the heading. Type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are partners in crime. They have shared pathophysiology. So the theory that I told earlier about AMA in Pittastana, because it is the same pathology which is in liver, in PCOS, in thyroid, in diabetes. I told it's the same thing. Don't believe me, you can believe the paper. I theorized this in 2015. Unfortunately, I was not invited for banning more lecture. Otherwise, I would have said this there. But some smart guy has went there and presented it there. But again, this confirms our theory. Again, it is not my finding. It is all in the textbooks. It is all in something else. We are not passionate like that. So, this is now being accepted that diabetes, NAFLD, PCOS, thyroid has very similar or shared pathophysiologies. This is accepted across the globe as of now. Okay? So I hope you got convinced as of now at least. So, first thing, so let's come back to Ayurveda, let's come back to our practice. So we are in Patiala, we are in Jalandhar, we are in Amritsar. What are we going to do about this? We got all the knowledge, we got whatever we wanted. So how are you and me going to reverse diabetes? We know that we got all the ingredients like that. So we need a real-time dosha-based Ayurveda management. We need a low-calorie diet approach. We need a high-fat burning exercise. Because the paper said you need exercises. Of course, we know it's a Medo Yoga. Medo Yoga, the treatment is also Lengthana. Lengthana is specifically exercises. Right? Vyayama, Marita, Seva are Lengthanas, right? We need Lengthana. So how do we do that? That's a question. So let's look at each one of them. So this part is important. Remember, we need kapha reducing protocol because if your patient is coming not with diabetic ketoacidosis, if your patient is not coming with high blood sugar, what you need to look at is kapha or kapha or slash ama. Right? You need medicines for that. If your yoga has pitta visheshan or vata visheshan, you need to have different protocols. I hope all of you are aware about sama pitta and sama vata, right? Both of them need different protocols. Your Amrutotram Kashayam is Sama Vata Hara. Your Patolati Kashayam is Sama Pitta Hara. Guruji is Sama Pitta Hara. Haritaki is Sama Vata Hara. Is that clear? Yes, I hope that is clear. So we need different protocols for different conditions. So you can use Tirukadi Kashayam, Shadharnam tablet, Guruji or ginger, medicated water, Amrutotram quark or Guruji quark. When I presented that Guruchari quark can be used in diabetes, many people were against me. But trust me, when you have Sama Pitta condition diabetes, you need to use Guruchari. There is no confusion about it. Okay? As simple as that. Then diet. The food should be heavy, but should not contribute nourishment. Kapha reducing, Krishna Vidya, water balancing, helps again hunger, but does not contribute to calories. You need to have some workout in your treatment regimen. Either it should be yoga. I am not a big yoga guy, I am a badminton guy, so I ask my patient to play badminton, but if you like yoga, please do yoga. Or walking is good. High burn cardio, at least your patient needs to hit gym 2 times a week. Some weight training has to be there in the protocol. Without which the protocol will be success. Okay? So that is important. Now, my biggest problem in applying this protocol was the diet. Trust me, I am a foodie. I love food. I have took my car and traveled hundreds of kilometers just to experience a restaurant or a special dish. Okay? I am telling this for proof. If you ever come to South, never miss this Dindigal Talapakati biryani. you'll be in fault for life. Or if you come to Coimbatore, never miss an Annapurna Pongal or Annapurna Masala Dosha. It will be never like Masala Dosha that you are not. It's very different. So I am a foodie. I love my food. The problem is, how do I prescribe food to my patients when I love my food so much? See, we think one of our doctor's problem. We don't think that we don't see analyze problems in a human level. We think everything from a textbook level. Why do we eat food? Why do we eat food? Hunger? No. Food is never eaten to satiate hunger. Food is eaten to get happiness. Trust me, food is going to get happiness. How many of your happiness is a big spread food? Right? See, can you remember when you were little children, how your mom made food for you? How you sit on the dining table and had food with your daddy, your mommy, papa, mama ke saath, right? Or when an uncle or auntie came visiting you, they bought sweets, or they bought some different dish, or you went out to restaurants and you eat together. What are you actually having? You are having happiness. You are having happiness. This is why, have you seen certain people, when people get depressed, they eat more food. Why? Because they need happiness. Food is the physical form of happiness. So I need more food, I need happiness, I'm depressed, I'm unhappy, I eat more food. Right? The allopats, those fools call it a disorder, like food eating disorder. It's not disorder, we are yearning for happiness. When I think that I do not deserve happiness, for example, I lost a loved one, or if I'm in a breakup, what do I think? I do not deserve happiness. Then what I say? I'm not hungry. I don't want food, I'm not hungry. So food is not just a physical thing that you eat to satiate hunger. That's a wrong notion. We think like that, that's why patients are suffering. Food is for happiness. If your diet, if your prescription, if your curated diet cannot make your patient happy, he or she is not going to stick with you as their doctor. You will fail. I guarantee it, I'll write you down in board paper right now. If your diet plan is not something that makes your patient happy, you will fail. Whatever medicine you apply, it's not going to work. I'll 100% guarantee you will fail. So you need to have a diet which is heavy but should not contribute to calories. Right? Which at the same time has satiate hunger will make the patient happy. So the question is what? How do you do it? Lucky, Acharya also has answer. So have you heard about this concept? The problem solution next called Guru Avatarpana. Have you heard this? Guru Avatarpana by Charaka. Charaka says the food that will satiate hunger, it is Guru. But it is Apatarpana. It is not Santarpana, it is Apatarpana. Example is Yavam, barley and honey, mathu. These are food which makes you feel satiated but will not contribute to calories. Say, if you are given one roti in the afternoon, one spoon of rice in the afternoon, 2 idlis in the morning, how will you survive? You won't survive, not with our patients. So they need to eat 4 rotis maybe, they need to eat a bit more rice maybe, because that means great satiation. But we have foods which are like barley or honey, which you can eat more but will not contribute to calories. So I thought, okay, we will make a diet plan which will include these kinds of Guru Avatarpana foods. So what I found out, these are the Guru Avatarpana food which you can find in our treatises. Whole husk wheat, Godhuma. See, we have very much polished wheat today. But at olden times when Vakra was writing this, the wheat was not as polished as today. So unhusked wheat, barley, yavam, millets, little millet, kodo millet, foxtail millet, the jowar and all those kind of things, right? The millet you. And I found one of the other stuff with modern research also, which is fruit fibers. Dried, powdered, unripe jackfruit. Have you ever seen a jackfruit? You might have seen jackfruit in its ripe form, which is very yellowish and very sweet in taste. So this is why culture becomes again a part, like I said in the start. There are only two places in this whole world which uses jackfruit as a complete meal. One is Sri Lanka, the other one is Kerala. We make jackfruit a whole meal. What we do, we actually get jackfruit when it is not ripe, when it is green, right? When it is green, it does not have any sweetness. Instead, it is very hard. It is full of a fiber called as pectin. So we get this unripe jackfruit, we boil it, right? Like you make a mashed potato, we make this boiled steamed jackfruit and we have it very happily with our fish curries. This is a main diet in Kerala. Okay? And the only other place where they have this kind of diet is Sri Lanka. And interestingly, Sri Lanka has done a study on jackfruit diet, which they published. The dotted lines are the jackfruit diet. The other line is a normal meal. So when you eat a jackfruit diet, what happens is that unripe, so be very conscious about this. It is not a ripe jackfruit, it has to be unripe jackfruit. The unripe jackfruit is full of a fiber called pectin. Pectin is the most complex fiber that is found in the nature. When you eat anything with pectin, pectin will act like a web. It will hold the glucose, it will not allow the glucose to be absorbed into the body and it will reduce glucose absorption. So when you eat, the sugar spike is similar, right? But you see the after the meal. So this is where you ingest your food, right? This is where you ingest the food, and then what happens? This is the sugar level. But look at the jackfruit meal. It is coming down sharp. This is because jackfruit is not allowing any glucose to be absorbed into the body. It will reduce the absorption of glucose into the body. At the same time, it is good. It is good. It will make you feel full. So I got this idea. So what I did is, I made a mix of this. I powdered this unhusked wheat, powdered all the millets. I got raw jackfruit powder. And I made rotis with this, I made doshas with this, I made idlis with this, I made anything I could make with this. I made halwas out of this. Everything was made with this diet and I fed this diet to my patient. I gave it to my patient and said, make anything you want with this, but with this. If you want to make roti, make with this. If you want to make idli, make with this. If you want to make dosha, do it with this. If you want to make masala dosha, do it. If you want to eat halwa, make it with this. Right? And they did. And I made sure that they go to the gym once a week, otherwise walking or some kind of sports activity, then the diet plan, the medicine plan that I showed you, and let me show you the results. This was my first patient. What he's saying is a 8-day protocol with the diet, with the medicine, and gym plan. The first day sugar level was 233. Next day came to 221, 183. I had a hypoglycemic event on day 3, 98, 114, 97, 68. Next. My second patient. This was a newly diabetes diagnosed patient. Not very high sugar, 121 only. Right? 121, 111, 111, 108, 101, 104, 83. These reasons. The diet that I said, the medicines that I said, the workout plan that I did. Another patient, 188, hypoglycemic, 60. This was very dangerous, right? Because this is hypoglycemic event from 188 to 68 one day. But look at the sugar, 116, 94, 105, 105. After coming from 188 to 90, the patient had 160. There's a spike there. Do you know what happened? I stopped their metformin in day 2. That is why you see the spike on day 2. That's what happened. Next. Another patient from 160 to 122. On day 2, stop metformin. Next. These are the medicines used in that protocol in that study. Abrota Kashyam was used for some patients. For some patients, Chirugad was used, Guruchari was used, Punanavami was used, Vishal was used in high 183 and above patients. Kadadadari was also used in 180 and above patients. Vishamala Churnam, Panchakola Churnam, Vipala, ISP. These were the medicines used in that pilot study that we had done. Okay. So, how do we establish reversal of diabetes? If you look at American Diabetic Association, Endocrine Society, European Association for Diabetes UK, they made a joint declaration that if your HbA1c level is below 6.5 for 3 months consecutively, then it will be called as a diabetic reversal. So the first 2 patients I treated, we did a HbA1c study as well, and the results were as follows. Before treatment, subject 1 was at 10 HbA1c, and in 3 months it became 8. 6.5 in 6 months. By 9 months, it was 6.1. Subject 2 was 8. In third month, it became 6. In 5.76 months. So by WHO criteria, you can actually call this as diabetic reversed. This is how you reverse diabetes. Okay? To complete everything that I said, there are 3 things important in this. One is the jackfruit diet which I used. You don't need to have jackfruit. You can also use millet diet, but diet is important, right? Low calorie, high fiber. Second thing is workout. It's actually a phone. Diabetes is a pramana is the only disease where Bhakra suggests the patient should actually dig your phone yourself because exercise is that important. Or you can roam with the cows and everything that they are doing. Third thing is the right medicines. To do these 3 things, you understand the pathology, do real-time dosha analysis. Yes, diabetes would be reversed. Thank you very much.
Bapak urus video bang.